Reflecting on her past existence, she recalls a life consumed by endless work without a single moment to relax or rest. Her grueling routine forced her to leave early every morning and only return home on the last train of the night. Day after relentless day, this exhausting cycle repeated itself with no end in sight. Her solitary joy came from reading web novels during the fleeting moments of free time she managed to snatch. One story caught her eye, a tale of Baroness Mizano defeating villainous Ronia to steal her fiancé Schneider. Illustrations depict the dramatic confrontation between the rival women as the story unfolds. The battle was fierce from the start, with Mizano proving to be just as aggressive and unrelenting as the nasty villainess. Ultimately, Ronia's evil deeds were exposed by her fiancé, forcing her into a humiliating banishment from the academy. Despite Ronia's villainy, she felt a pang of pity and wished the conflict could have been resolved more peacefully. Sudden exhaustion strikes her down, causing her to collapse onto the floor of the crowded train platform. Realizing death is imminent, she accepts her fate with a final wish to live a more relaxed life next time. Her consciousness fades into darkness as her eyes close on her weary existence. Carrying that desperate wish for peace, she wakes up to find herself reborn in a new world. Her hands move with practiced care as she prepares tea, unaware of the shock awaiting her. Horror strikes as she realizes she is now Ronia Gavizera, the villainous daughter from the novel she read. Shock overwhelms her senses, causing her to drop the tray and send the tea set crashing to the ground. Panic erupts as she screams amidst the clattering debris, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. A young man spots the commotion and instantly recognizes Ronia standing in the mess. He rushes over to ask what happened, wondering if she is being bullied by someone. The presence of prank spiders on the tray confuses him, as the situation makes no sense to him. Ronia identifies him as Hansel, one of the few friends she can truly trust at the academy. She decides to keep her mouth shut about the bullying to avoid complicating things further. Looking up at him with hesitation, she calls his name as he samples the drink she made. Hansel is stunned by the taste, declaring it the best coffee he's ever had and suggesting she open a business. Flustered by the compliment, Ronia blushes while flowers bloom in the background of her mind. She quickly dismisses the idea, insisting her skills aren't enough to make real money. In secret, she hopes to open a small cafe and serve coffee once she is inevitably banished from the academy. Hansel questions why she doesn't rely on her fiancé Schneider to handle these troubles for her. They converse in the garden as Hansel looms protectively over the seated villainess. Ronia smiles through her knowledge of the plot, fully prepared for the protagonist to steal her fiancé. Calling her a tough woman, Hansel vows to confront the issue directly if the situation demands it. Fate marches forward as the destined day of the story's climax finally arrives at the castle. Crowds whisper about the audacity of Baroness Mizano Akuji standing beside Prince Schneider, Ronia's fiancé. They deem it insane for a mere baroness to call out the powerful Gavizera noble family. Onlookers analyze the color of Misano's dress, noting the red shade represents victory. They conclude that she must be incredibly confident in winning this confrontation. Mizano points an accusatory finger forward, directly addressing her opponent by name. She calls out, Miss Ronia Gavizera, to initiate the public condemnation. She loudly declares her intention to expose all of Ronia's evil deeds to the public. Ronia realizes this scenario matches the novel perfectly and knows she will be forced out of the academy. Ronia feigns ignorance, claiming she has no recollection of the accusations and asking for a reminder. Internally, she accepts that she will lose her place in aristocratic society just as the story dictates. As she speaks, Ronia realizes her own words are an exact match for the dialogue in the novel. The realization strikes her with a sense of déjà vu. Heavy footsteps echo across the floor as someone approaches to escalate the confrontation. Schneider steps in to accuse Ronia of trying to hurt Mizano with magic. He adds that she once dropped a heavy book on the Baroness, nearly hitting her. He claims Ronia missed her target during the book incident, framing it as a malicious attack. Ronia listens silently as her fiancé twists the events against her. Shock freezes her expression as the betrayal cuts deep. A soft gasp escapes her lips, the only sound she can manage in the face of ruin. She accepts the novel's script is absolute, realizing her parents and brother will likely cut all connections. Bitterness wells up as she recalls never being praised or recognized, no matter how hard she tried. With a heavy heart, she notes that Miss Mizano cannot possibly understand the reality of her family situation. She attempts to tell Schneider that as her fiancé, he should know what the Gavizera family is truly like. However, he abruptly cuts her off before she can finish her explanation. Schneider coldly states that he cannot have any sympathy for Miss Ronia. His words shut down any chance she had of defending herself. Ms. Ano brings forward Ronia's own followers as witnesses to testify to the alleged bullying. She prompts them to confirm the deeds right there in front of everyone. The followers lie, claiming Ronia instructed them to act and that they were too afraid of the Gavizera family to refuse. They pretend they wanted to stop but were forced to participate. Ronia clenches her hands in frustration, knowing she was actually the one who stopped them from attacking Ms. Ano. She holds back the truth while they paint her as the instigator. She decides to remain silent, reasoning that if she takes the responsibility, her followers won't be punished too harshly. The weight of her identity as Miss Ronia hangs heavy in the air as the condemnation continues. Ms. Ano taunts her, asking why she won't admit she went crazy over her love for the prince. Schneider demands to know if she thought she could stay silent about her actions. Schneider interrupts the interrogation with a wave of his hand, telling Ms. Ano to leave the rest to him. With a burst of magic, he conjures a formal document out of thin air. He reveals the paper to be their official engagement agreement. He rips the document in half, declaring that he is destroying their prior engagement agreement. Immediately after the breakup, he pulls Ms. Ano into a passionate embrace as they call out each other's names. Ronia watches them, recalling how they have been together since childhood and how he used to spoil her. She wonders how he would reply if she asked him to believe in her, knowing he knows her better than anyone. Seeing the couple together, she accepts that she cannot escape the fate written for her. She finds the repetition of these events tiring, noting that everything is following the popular web novel's plot. The cycle of attacking and being attacked plays out exactly as expected. The crowd applauds the spectacle, cheering that the proud Gavizera family that looked down on them has finally fallen. They mock the situation as a good show, while celebrating her downfall. With a final look back, Ronia whispers a quiet farewell to her past life. She acknowledges the red string of fate connecting the new couple and sincerely wishes for them to be happy. Ronia reflects that she could never bring herself to hate Schneider because she knew the novel's ending beforehand, even if his behavior made her desire for a relaxed life difficult. She opens the door with a sense of finality, announcing that she has officially graduated from her role as the villainous daughter. Stepping out of the building, she enters the light as the sound of footsteps echoes around her. A loyal accomplice waits attentively at the bottom of the stairs, standing by to facilitate her immediate departure. Ronia screams in triumph and leaps into the air, celebrating her newfound freedom with a shout of joy. She lands in the arms of her accomplice, squeezing him tight and thanking him for coming to retrieve her. The man frantically checks her for injuries, addressing her as Lady Ronia and asking if she is hurt. She smiles brightly and assures him she is all right, explaining that she predicted exactly how the confrontation with Ms. Ano would end. She reveals that her luggage was already stowed in the carriage, proving she had planned this escape with her accomplice well in advance. Feeling completely refreshed, she declares that nothing at the academy remains to hold her back. The accomplice looks nervous and addresses her as Mildy, seemingly overwhelmed by her energy. He begs her not to get excited too soon, apologizing while Ronia cheerfully waves off his caution. Ronia mentally apologizes to Hansel for leaving without a goodbye, resolving to write him a letter about chasing her dream. She orders the carriage to set off for Damska's, noting that the original novel never explored the villainess's life beyond this point. Eager for her second chance, she heads toward a countryside city that her family and Schneider know nothing about. The scene shifts abruptly to the sound of combat as swords clash violently in a sudden skirmish. A blonde warrior fights desperately, parrying strikes as he is surrounded by beastmen in a fierce encounter. The battle rages on with axes and blades swinging wildly as the combatants trade heavy blows in the melee. The fighting subsides as the beastmen group together, with one growling and complaining that he is starving. They realize there is nowhere to eat and wonder aloud if anyone out there can make them a delicious meal. Oblivious to the warrior's hunger, Ronia hums a tune in her carriage as she travels toward her new life. The story shifts to the countryside city of Damascus, far removed from the capital's bustle. A group of beastkin travelers enters a stone building, seeking payment for their work. They dump a pile of badges on the counter as proof that the elimination of the rogues is complete. Disappointment strikes as the receptionist reveals the official request hasn't arrived yet, meaning he cannot pay them. Pivoting to their hunger, they ask for food only to be bluntly told they cannot be served there. The receptionist explains that their presence would scare other customers and ruin the establishment's business. Ryusei takes the rejection with a strained smile, accepting the prejudice with practiced ease. He admits there aren't many shops that will serve them and tells Senna to give up on eating there. Resigned to their reality, the group accepts that the situation cannot be helped. Ryusei sighs, realizing they are destined for another night of terrible food. A desperate plea rings out as one of them begs for anyone to make them a good meal. Sunlight warms the exterior of a charming vine-covered cottage elsewhere in the city. Inside the peaceful home, Ronia sleeps soundly in her bed. She blinks her eyes open, waking up to the start of a significant day. Stretching with a yawn, she motivates herself to get up and open the shop. She recalls her past life as an average Japanese woman and her reincarnation as Ronia Gavizera. The memory of seeing her Western appearance in the mirror for the first time still feels strange to her. Her hands deftly tie the knot of her apron as she prepares for work. She admires her blue eyes and sky-blue hair that shimmers like silver depending on the sunlight. Fully embracing her identity as the villainess from the web novel, she puts on the prim and proper smile she has practiced. Anticipating her banishment, she had secretly worked with an accomplice to set up this cafe in lively Damascus. Today marks the grand opening day for her cafe in this new town. She hopes customers will arrive, noting she informed the townspeople about the coffee and sandwiches. Realizing she can't handle the cleaning alone, she decides to call upon friends she made at the academy. Magic swirls in the air as she summons her helpers. Adorable lotus flower fairies appear with a soft fluff, greeting her happily. Overcome by their cuteness, Ronia asks them to assist her with some light cleaning. The fairies salute, honoring the contract where she fulfills their wants in exchange for their power. With her helpers organized, Ronia resolves to get to work alongside them. She stands ready at the cash register, waiting for the first sign of business. A sudden tug on her clothes catches her attention. She turns around to see who is demanding her attention. Focusing on the ingredients before her, Ronia prepares to start baking by gathering the flour and eggs. A small fairy questions her choice, asking in surprise if she really prefers cooking over cleaning. Ronia confirms with a bright smile, prompting the fairy to declare he will rely on her assistance for the task. Excitedly, the fairy announces that their first order of business is making pancakes for breakfast. Ronia tastes the creation, exclaiming that the flavor is delicious and perfectly sweet and sour. Trembling with pride, the fairy explains the tart sauce uses mixed berries he gathered with help from the forest fairies. Ronia instructs him that the tarts are for customers while she starts making the pancakes for their own meal. She requests a serving of yogurt and berry sauce on the side to complete her breakfast plate. Satisfied with the food, she offers a polite thanks for the delicious meal before getting back to work. The fairy bundles up the leftovers, and Ronia cheerfully tells him to share the rest with his friends in the forest. Bidding her farewell, the fairy flies off through a magical portal, leaving Ronia to tend to the shop. Outside, Ronia busies herself with the exterior of her quaint cottage cafe, preparing for the day ahead. Passers-by notice her, with one man blushing and remarking that he has never seen anyone so pretty and cute before. They discuss the cafe's name, Mattari, as Ronia greets them warmly and asks for their patronage. The group speculates on her origins, noting her refined air suggests she must have grown up in the capital. Concern arises among them that such a young girl is living alone, and they wonder what reasons brought her here. Ronia hangs a sign on the door, signaling that her business is ready to welcome visitors. A voice calls out a casual greeting as someone approaches the entrance of the newly opened shop. Locals explain that this outskirt town is safe because rogues prefer targeting cities closer to the wealthy capital. The beast mercenary group hired by the Lord stands watch, their imposing presence dominating the street. Despite their role as protectors, the townsfolk find the mercenaries sketchy and recall warnings about beastkin. Remembering childhood warnings to stay away from beastkin, the man expresses genuine worry for Ronia's safety. Ronia notices the gathering crowd and realizes the townspeople have come to see what she is doing. Reflecting on her joy, she realizes she never thought she would find working so much fun compared to her past. In a painful memory, a young Ronia begs her mother to reduce her training so she can have a moment to herself. Her mother responds with a vicious slap across the face, screaming Ronia's name in anger. The mother berates her for being lazy as Ronia collapses to the floor in shock and pain. With cold cruelty, her mother questions if Ronia is actually her daughter while the child flinches in fear. Tears stream down her face as she realizes aristocratic children are denied a childhood and forbidden from speaking their minds. Her brother intervenes coldly, ordering Ronia to apologize to her mother for the perceived transgression. Trembling on the floor, the young girl looks up at her brother, trapped in a life of rigid expectations. Back in the present, she muses that she ended up repeating the same mistakes of overworking that she made in her first life. Ronia blushes intensely, her expression a mix of embarrassment and distress as a sudden realization hits her. She vigorously shakes her head to dispel the unwanted memory, telling herself that it is already in the past and she must forget it. Having waited so patiently for this time to relax, she named her cafe, Mattari, to reflect her desire for a laid-back life. The quiet interior of the shop stands ready, perfectly embodying the peaceful atmosphere she had always envisioned. The silence is suddenly broken by the chime of the doorbell, signaling the arrival of a visitor. A hesitant customer peeks through the door, asking timidly if the cafe is currently open for business. Ronia beams with a welcoming smile and invites the guest inside immediately. Many weeks pass by, and the cafe becomes incredibly crowded, with customers clamoring for refills and calling out her name. The busy atmosphere continues as patrons praise the delicious cake and eagerly ask to order another one. Ronia maintains her cheerful demeanor despite the rush, assuring customers she is coming and asking them to wait just a moment. She confirms a request for 2 mochas and dashes off to prepare the order right away. Ronia realizes with a flustered expression that owning a cafe is far more tiring than she ever imagined. She had pictured a quiet life where customers visited occasionally, leaving her time to drink coffee with a pet cat. Snapping back to reality, she laments that she doesn't even have a cat and has absolutely no time to recommend anything to customers. She screams internally as male customers aggressively hit on her, offering discounts and inviting her to their own restaurants. While maintaining a strained smile, she mentally resolves to put up a sign prohibiting flirting in the shop before taking their orders. Ronia regrets not using transformation magic to hide her appearance, realizing too late that her looks are considered beautiful in this world. Outside the cafe, a group of beastmen catches a scent and begins sniffing the air curiously. Enticed by the nice smell, the beastmen hesitate, fearing they will only be chased away if they approach. They spot the building and wonder if it is the rumored cafe everyone is talking about. Inside, Ronia feels she is on the brink of collapsing from exhaustion and decides she must come up with a plan to survive. A beastman cautiously enters the shop, noting that there aren't any customers around, which catches Ronia's attention. He observes the strange sight of untouched food still sitting on the tables and finds it weird. Glancing around the empty room, he turns to Ronia and asks her what happened to cause such a scene. Ronia is instantly captivated by the fluffy appearance of her new customer, internally cooing over his texture while offering a warm welcome. She notes that beastkin are born with the ability to transform, realizing this is her first time seeing one despite learning about them at the academy. Recall dictates that these beings can appear as humans, beasts, or hybrids and possess extraordinary gifts in both strength and agility. A dark warning lingers in her mind that a beastkin could easily kill a human if they wished, meaning one should never let their guard down. Despite the danger, Ronia finds herself mesmerized by the rhythmic swaying of his incredibly fluffy tail. Snapping back to reality, she offers to clear a seat for him and asks if he is comfortable sitting at the counter. The beastkin glances around the empty shop, his large ears twitching as he observes his surroundings. He bluntly asks where all the other customers disappeared to, noticing the sudden vacancy. Ronia realizes they likely fled in fear, leaving their money on the counter in their haste to escape. The visitor points a clawed finger at the drink in her hand, inquiring about its contents. She stammers slightly as she identifies the beverage as a simple latte. He decides to order one of those immediately, stating there is no need for him to take a seat. While he suggests the one she is holding is good enough, Ronia insists on maintaining professional standards and preparing him a fresh latte. As she holds the cup, she is distracted by his fluffy hands and fights the urge to touch them. He asks for the check quickly while Ronia internally scolds herself for almost acting undignified by lamenting the lack of a takeout option. She introduces herself simply as Ronia, prompting him to ask if she is the manager of the shop. The beastkin questions where her family is, surprised that someone so young is running the place all by herself. Ronia pauses, her eyes reflecting a moment of silent contemplation regarding his invasive question. She sits opposite him, guarding the truth of her noble origins behind a carefully maintained silence. In her mind, she confirms that she lives apart from her family by her own accord, a secret shared only with her grandfather, Reijo and Hansel, though she hid the location from the latter. When townspeople pry into her life, she usually deflects with a smile and claims it is a secret, which has kept anyone from digging deeper so far. The customer labels her situation as independence but ominously asks if she doesn't think it is dangerous. He leans in to emphasize his point, using himself, a beastkin, as a prime example of the threat she faces. Ronia counters that humans and beastkin are the same despite the risk of hurt, but he swiftly rejects her naive sentiment. Internally, Ronia ignores the philosophical debate to admire how incredibly fluffy his coat of fur looks. Her imagination runs wild with desires to pet his head, ears, and hold his fluffy hands. Reality crashes back in when he places a gold coin on the counter for payment. She mentally calculates the absurdity, noting that a gold coin is worth vastly more than the 3 copper coins needed for a lot. Flustered, she tries to offer him his change, but he has already turned to leave. He declares the excess money a tip and an apology for causing her other customers to flee, promising to return. Ronia is left standing in the empty shop, stunned by the encounter and the generosity of the stranger. As she watches him go, she quietly hopes that she will indeed see him again. Stepping out of her cottage, Ronia pauses amidst the lush greenery and the quiet atmosphere of the town. She feels a pang of guilt for receiving such a large tip from her earlier customer. Wishing for more company, she hopes he will stay longer the next time he visits. Wiping a plate, she realizes she hasn't had a single customer since that man left the cafe. She takes a bite of her food, finally enjoying a quiet moment of sustenance. Realizing this is her first free moment since opening, she decides to pick up the novel she has always wanted to read. Sitting by the window with an hourglass, she opens the book and lets her mind drift back to the past. Memories surface of noble ladies asking if she has kept up with the recent poetry collections. Surrounded by chatter about coral pink trends and manner books, Ronia reflects that she could never read what she actually wanted. As a daughter of the Gavizra family, she was forced to master topics like ball dances to avoid being labeled uncultured. She hated noble life and longed to leave her family, staying only for the sake of her grandfather. While her parents and brother offered no warmth, her grandfather was the only one who showed her kindness. After her grandmother's death, her influential grandfather retired from society and handed everything to her father. Whenever he visited, her lessons ended early, granting her precious time to relax by his side. Desperate for peace, she once begged to live with him to escape her hectic daily routine. However, her fate was sealed when she was abruptly informed that her fiancé had been decided. The partner chosen for her was none other than the prince, His Royal Highness Schneider Zealand. The royal family expected Ronia to grow into a woman of extreme beauty and astounding presence. To meet these high expectations, she was told to perfect her actions and words through endless lessons. The royal engagement crushed her dream of living in seclusion with her grandfather, making her feel like a mere pawn. Her mother coldly reminded her that this is the world of a novel, forcing reality upon her. Ronia realized she just had to endure until the age of 16, when the engagement was destined to be broken. With a timeline set in her mind, she resolved that all she needed to do was wait for that day. Snapping back to the present, she is startled to see the clock has already struck 8. She was so absorbed in her reading that closing time arrived without her noticing. Energized, she calls out for some help with the cleaning to close up the shop. The small fairies appear instantly, striking poses as they answer her call. Instead of helping, the fairies cross their arms and look at her with stern disapproval. Confused by their refusal, Ronia asks them what is wrong. They gesture a big no and point towards the bed, signaling that she needs to sleep instead of work. Ronia tries to protest, insisting that she isn't that tired today. Defeated by their care, she agrees to rest and thanks them as she heads upstairs. Ronia watches affectionately as tiny spirits eagerly take over the cleaning duties, sensing her exhaustion from the past few days. Relaxing in a bath, she reflects that she is no longer bound by the web novel's plot and admits that running a cafe alone is hard. Clutching her grandfather's hourglass, she celebrates her freedom from the villainess's exiled fate and excitedly recalls meeting a fluffy beastkin earlier that day. A sudden realization strikes her mid-bath as she panics that her shop might actually be in a financial pinch right now. Dread fills her thoughts as she stares at her cafe's exterior, terrified of what she will do if no customers show up tomorrow. Her fears prove unfounded the next day as the cafe bustles with energy, with customers clamoring for seconds while Ronia serves them. Ronia beams with a bright smile while serving cake to her delighted customers, charming the patrons with her warm hospitality. Despite the success, she internally sighs, admitting that she misses the relaxing sensation she was able to enjoy just yesterday. Watching a customer devour her cake with gusto, Ronia feels a surge of happiness seeing her patrons enjoy the coffee and sweets. The regulars apologetically explain that they left abruptly yesterday without saying anything, while another customer scolds them for bothering Ronia just because she is cute. The mood shifts as the customers reveal the reason for their disappearance, warning Ronia that the dangerous beastkin arrived in town. Concerned for her safety, they advise her to carry an anti-beast amulet because the mercenary group might have their eyes on her. Ronia's imagination runs wild with adorable images of fluffy animals as she tries to process the idea of a dangerous, beastkin mercenary group. She examines her anti-beast amulet, surprised to learn that the charm meant to ward off dangerous animals is also effective against beastkin. Recalling the gentle fox from the previous day, she realizes that the townspeople's hatred allows them to easily cut ties with the beastkin. A customer explains the geopolitical danger, noting that the country neighboring Damskas is likely one of the most dangerous nations around. To protect the safe town from the bandits and purgers that usually invade, the local lord hired the strongest mercenary group available. Despite the protection they provide, the customers insist that anyone in a mercenary group is dangerous, warning Ronia that the beastkin are the worst of them all. A piercing gaze fills the frame as the fox beastkin stares intently forward. Earlier that day, the mercenary group gathers in a tavern to discuss their next move regarding the town's new establishment. The large lion mercenary asks the boss if they are planning to visit that specific cafe today. The boss confirms he scouted it yesterday, prompting the others to ask if the rumors about the place are true. He reports that for some mysterious reason, the manager is a beautiful young woman running the business all by herself. He speculates she must have a wealthy backer, otherwise she is destined to run into danger sooner or later. He reasons that a young woman operating a shop entirely on her own is effectively making herself a target for criminals. The danger is compounded by the cafe's location on the outskirts, an area frequently targeted by thieves. He visualizes bandits attacking her, asking his crew if a beautiful woman wouldn't be a prime target for them. Despite the risks, the boss decides they should go because no other cafe accepts them and they deserve a decent meal for protecting the city. The lion mercenary eagerly asks if he can get a steak, but the boss reminds him it is a coffee shop that definitely does not serve meat. Ryusei suggests they go in human forms to flirt, though Senna points out he is the only one interested in doing that. Chise dismisses the idea as lame, but Ryusei ignores the insult and tries to push his plan. Ryusei worries the shop will be full, but the boss ignores the chatter and declares he is going there today regardless. Determined to woo the beauty, Ryusei decides on his human form after learning the boss went in his beast form yesterday. A heavy silence falls over the group as the implication of the boss's appearance sinks in. The mercenaries burst into laughter, realizing the boss probably scared all the customers away with his beast form. They tease him about making the shopkeeper cry, noting that even their ears and tails are enough to terrify humans. The boss admits she was a bit surprised, though he tries to downplay the reaction. Senna argues that their human forms won't make a difference since their animal traits will still frighten the customers. The boss defends himself, insisting that he really doesn't think she was scared of him. Ryusei sarcastically remarks that the cafe must be laid back, predicting it won't be once they show up. The boss looks away in annoyance, frustrated that Ryusei isn't even listening to his defense. Back at the cafe, terrified customers throw money on the table and flee the moment the mercenaries arrive. Ronia stands confused amidst the empty tables, wondering why everyone ran away when nothing is on fire. The mercenary group enters the shop, and Ryusei immediately comments that the manager really is a beauty. Ronia gasps in delight, completely misreading the situation as the arrival of new customers. She locks eyes with the boss, her expression one of recognition rather than fear. Ronia welcomes them warmly, recognizing Mr. Jackal and offering to prepare a table for his friends. She correctly guesses they are the rumored beastkin mercenaries based on their matching jackets. The lion complains again about wanting meat while the boss tries to keep order. The mercenaries sniff the air, entranced by a sweet scent drifting through the cafe and wondering if it is flowers. Ronia wonders if the lotus fairies can substitute for flowers, hoping their scent will reach her guests. Trembling with excitement, she apologizes for the lack of steak while desperately fighting the urge to pet their fur. She offers a compromise, suggesting she could prepare some sandwiches filled with meat for them instead. The beastmen eagerly accept, demanding extra pastrami with a voracious appetite that matches their reputation. Ronia serves their drinks with a warm smile, starting their meal with a round of refreshments. One of the mercenaries asks if she finds them scary, calling her Wani-chan, while observing her calm demeanor. Ronia laments internally that they aren't fluffy in their current forms, while asking about their beastkin nature. She inquires about their ability to shift between beast, half-beast, and human forms with genuine curiosity. The mercenary corrects her, clarifying that he is referring to their superior physical abilities compared to humans. Ronia nods in understanding, acknowledging their reputation as the strongest mercenary group in the land. The group freezes in surprise, blushing slightly at her straightforward acceptance of their strength. Confused by her lack of fear, one mercenary asks if she is simply a natural airhead. His companions debate whether she is naive or crazy, while Ronia tilts her head in pure confusion. The leader explains that the city lord hired them specifically to protect vulnerable people like her. He warns her that the city is filled with immoral and dangerous individuals who could target her. Smirking, he offers their protection as a service, telling her to think of it as part of the job. Ronia realizes this explains the intense look Mr. Jackal gave her the previous day. A silent moment passes as the mercenary watches her, gauging her reaction to their offer. Suddenly, the mood lightens as they order more coffee and cake, affectionately calling her Ronia-chan. Ronia understands they are pitying her, seeing her as a helpless single woman running a shop alone. Noticing the hateful glares from the townspeople, she recognizes that despite their reputation, the mercenaries have a strong sense of justice. However, she calculates the cost of their protection, knowing that accepting it will come with a price. A confident thought crosses her mind, asserting that she is much stronger than they believe her to be. She reflects on how she overcame her role as an evil villainess to secure her own freedom. Memories surface of her 9-year-old self, realizing she had to endure a doomed engagement for 7 long years. She bitterly wishes that Schneider had hated her and cancelled the engagement much sooner than he did. Her knowledge of the future came from reading the novel in her previous life, guiding her actions. She wonders how much time she spent desperately trying to carve a path outside the novel's story. A vivid memory of a hand extending towards her fills her mind, taking her back to the past. Young Schneider stands before her in a church, offering his hand with a polite smile. He admits that although their marriage is arranged, he genuinely wants to get to know her. With a kind expression, the young prince suggests they learn to love each other, sealing her fate. 2 hands reach out across the void, seeking connection in a moment of tender vulnerability. The fingers interlace tightly, sealing a bond of trust and mutual understanding between the two. In a distant memory, Schneider teases Ronia for napping during their time together, asking if she is merely pretending to sleep. Laughter bubbles up between them as the facade breaks, filling the air with the warmth of their shared joy. Ronia confesses her secret desire to live a relaxed life rather than a noble one, fearfully asking Schneider if he is disappointed in her. Schneider gently pats her head, reassuring her that he could never be disappointed in someone who works as hard as she does. Tears well up in Ronia's eyes as his kindness touches her heart, offering a fleeting sense of acceptance. She admits to foolishly hoping that her future might diverge from the tragic destiny written in the web novel. Snapping back to the present, Ronia assures her guests she can protect herself, citing her top-ranking performance at the academy. She explains that her grandfather only allowed her independence because she proved she was strong enough to defend herself. Regret fills her voice as she reflects that if she had known Schneider would eventually hate her, she never would have made those happy memories. Casting aside the city's prejudice, she declares that as long as the beastkin are her customers, they will always be welcome in her cafe. A mischievous blush colors her cheeks as she internally giggles, refusing to pass up the opportunity to be around such fluffy creatures. With a graceful bow, she officially welcomes the mercenaries to Café Mattari, inviting them to rest and relax. The fox beast man stares in stunned silence, completely taken aback by the human woman's unexpected hospitality. His companion remains frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the kindness being offered to their group. A confused exclamation hangs in the air as the group struggles to process her genuine welcome. The chapter opens with a close-up of the mercenaries enjoying a meal of sandwiches. Ronia smiles, aware that she appears to them as a stubborn, naive girl rather than someone with hidden magical abilities. One of the mercenaries breaks the silence to request another cup of coffee. Ronia cheerfully agrees and offers to bring him another sandwich to go with it. While pouring the coffee, she wonders if their cautious behavior is due to the awkward atmosphere or a misunderstanding about her hiring them. She serves the food, deciding not to ask for protection to avoid driving them away, as she is confident she can protect herself. Ronia notes that their intimidating presence keeps other customers away, which ironically gives her time to relax. The mercenaries ask if they can stay a bit longer, knowing their presence deters other patrons. Ronia agrees with a bow, secretly pleased that she might get to finish her own lunch. She steps away to read her book while the men continue to occupy the tables. Ronia takes a bite of her cake, enjoying a moment of peace. The mercenaries converse quietly, observing that everything seems to be going well. A hand turns the page of a book as the quiet atmosphere settles over the cafe. The group finishes eating and thanks her for the meal, but one notices her hiding spot. Ronia jolts in surprise when asked why she is hiding in the corner reading a book. Flustered, she apologizes, explaining she thought reading in front of customers might be considered rude. The mercenary yawns and assures her that they really don't mind her relaxing. Relieved, Ronia tells herself to be more careful about getting too absorbed in her reading next time. He announces his intention to take a nap and promises to tip extra for the service. He graciously tells the manager she can continue reading her book while they rest. Ronia smiles warmly, touched by their unexpected consideration. Realizing they might get cold, she offers a blanket for them to use. She gasps in sheer shock at the sudden transformation before her eyes. The intimidating mercenaries have turned into a pile of adorable, fluffy animals to sleep. Ronia is overwhelmed by the cuteness, suppressing a squeal as she desperately wants to pet them. She admires the black lion, resisting the urge to bury her face in his dignified mane. Her gaze shifts to Mr. Jackal, and she longs to stroke his adorable ears and fluffy tail. She fawns over the white feline, debating his species while wanting to squish his paw jellies. Admiring the blue wolf's wild fur, she fights the urge to brush him to her heart's content. Her heart pounds as she realizes they revert to their animal forms when they sleep. Delighted that the fluffy mercenary group is back, she thanks them mentally and prepares to dive in. A small sound escapes into the quiet room. Ronia scolds herself for thinking of her customers as stray cats, reminding herself she cannot pet them even if they are asleep. She suppresses her dangerous urge to touch their fluff and decides to focus on cleaning the shop instead. The beastmen stare at her with intense, predatory eyes that make the air feel heavy. Shuddering slightly at their scary forms, Ronia forces a smile and announces she will clear the empty dishes. One mercenary scoots his plate toward her, a surprisingly cute gesture that catches her off guard. She reaches for the plate with exaggerated care, whispering a reminder to herself not to wake them. Ronia washes the dishes quietly, the sound of water the only noise in the tense silence. A close-up reveals the beastmen are fast asleep, their fearsome expressions softened by rest. Sunlight streams through the window, casting a harsh glare directly onto the napping warriors. Ronia worries that the bright light is too intense and will disturb their much-needed sleep. She wants to lower the shades but hesitates, afraid that approaching the window will wake them up. An idea strikes her, and she rustles through her pocket to find a solution. She produces a flower-adorned ring, a magical tool she crafted to move inanimate objects. Ronia notes that while tools help, only those with proper affinity and training can truly wield magic. With a focused gaze and a peace sign, she activates the ring to cast her spell. The curtains flutter and close on their own, blocking out the sun in response to her command. One of the mercenaries stirs, his keen senses detecting the activation of an expensive magical device. A beastly eye snaps open, sharp and alert, instantly aware of the magical energy in the room. A concerned neighbor urges Ronia to buy an anti-beast amulet, warning her of the danger. He insists the mercenary's mood won't last, but Ronia refuses, claiming she doesn't need protection. She defends the beastmen, stating they were neither violent nor threatening during their visit. When he worries about her shop being destroyed, she confidently thinks she can fix it with magic. Suddenly, a hand grabs her wrist, pulling her attention to a man with an unwanted grip. Mr. Macway, a rival coffee shop owner, appears with a flashy smile and calls her lovely. He introduces himself with a sparkle, but Ronia knows him only as the annoyance from Cedric. Ronia forces a noble lady smile to hide her disgust at his suffocating cologne and rude behavior. He tries to recruit her to his store again, but she firmly refuses, citing her dream to run her own. Macway insults the beastmen as small fry, while Ronia reflects on their importance as border protectors. She excuses herself, deciding the scary mercenaries are far more gentlemanly than this manipulative man. Back in the present, Ronia watches the beastmen sleep, happy to relax with her book despite missing the chance to pet them. She realizes they likely stayed behind to guard her shop, fulfilling their duty to protect the town. Ronia empathizes with them, noting that fear of beastkin leads to unfair misunderstandings, much like her own past. In a flashback, Ronia moves to fix a cup of coffee served slightly too dark, but her servant Reijo freezes in sheer panic at her actions. Reijo apologizes frantically, insisting that a daughter of the Gavizra family should never trouble herself with menial tasks. He laments his inferiority compared to the family's other perfect servants and bows his head in deep, trembling sorrow. Ronia realizes that his overwhelming nervousness and the pressure of perfection are causing him to fumble his work. A close-up reveals Reijo's face contorted in terror, sweating and shaking as he fears the consequences of his mistake. Schneider approaches and asks Ronia if the rumors of her being harsh on others are true, leaving her unsure how to respond without frightening Reijo further. Reijo interrupts to take the blame, claiming he did something wrong, while Ronia tries to explain that it isn't his fault. Schneider watches the interaction with a sharp, discerning gaze, observing the dynamic between mistress and servant. His expression turns cold and disappointed, silently judging the situation based on the unfortunate misunderstanding. Ronia narrates that her response likely looked like a clumsy excuse after being caught in an inconvenient situation. She explains that her father's terrifying reputation as the ruler of the Southeastern Empire cast a dark shadow over her own image. Visuals of roses entangled in sharp thorns symbolize the dangerous and isolating prestige associated with her family name. The academy was starkly divided between those successful in their engagements and those who weren't, further isolating her. A jagged crack runs through the void, representing how people judged her solely on her outer appearance and social standing. She admits that part of the fault may have been hers for never actively seeking to engage with others. Determined to break the cycle, she vows not to repeat those painful experiences and affirms her new life away from the Gavizra family. Though her earnings may decrease, she refuses to reject the beastkin, knowing in her heart they are good people. Ronia wonders if she should be blunt with a recurring annoyance, realizing with dread that he has arrived again. Mr. Macway enters with a sparkle, prompting Ronia to force a noble lady smile, while greeting him as distantly as possible. Macway immediately brings up the rumors of the beast mercenary group visiting her shop, looking for gossip. He slams his hand down on the counter, asking if she was injured and claiming the mercenaries are extremely difficult to deal with. Having heard she lacks fear, he announces that he came specifically to give her something for her protection. Ronia suffocates under his cologne as he creeps closer, claiming he wouldn't know what to do if she got hurt and dismissing the gift's cost as nothing. She firmly pushes his hand away, cutting him off mid-sentence to stop his unwanted advance. Ronia declares with absolute resolve that the beast mercenary group are welcomed customers in her shop. Macway stares at her in silence, his expression unreadable as he processes her unexpected defense of the beasts. He patronizingly calls her kind but insists the beasts will trample on her, attempting to force an anti-beast amulet onto her. A loud clang rings out as a large, armored hand intercepts Macway's wrist, stopping him cold. The lion beastman looms behind them, teeth bared in a ferocious snarl to protect Ronia from the harassment. Mr. Macway trembles in fear as a large hand reaches out and forcefully yanks the object hanging from his neck. The anti-beast amulet is ripped away with a sharp tug, leaving the man gasping in shock as the chain snaps. One of the mercenaries inspects the confiscated item, realizing it is an amulet specifically designed to repel their kind. Ronia observes the scene, noting the key-shaped design of the magical protective charm held in the beast's hand. With a powerful crush, the beastman shatters the crystal effortlessly, proving it useless unless properly affixed to a building. Instead of fear, Ronia clasps her hands together and marvels at the incredible physical strength of the beastkin. The large lion mercenary suddenly thuds against the table and begins to shake violently, causing concern. Ronia worries he might be upset about the amulet, but then notices his clothes are tattered and torn from battle. Suddenly, he roars out that he is starving, while his companions complain about a terrible smell filling the room. They sniff the air and question if the awful stench is coming from the human, or perhaps their own battle-worn state. Ronia remarks that the lion looks rather beat up, to which he agrees, preferring rest over dealing with the rude customer. She identifies the distinct scent of iron and gunpowder radiating from their bodies, confirming they have seen combat. A close-up shows the weary expression of the wolf beastman, hinting at the exhaustion from a recent struggle. Ronia deduces that they must have just returned from a hard-fought battle against bandits or thieves. Taking advantage of the distraction, Mr. Macway tries to sneak out the door to avoid paying or confrontation. Ronia and a wolf beastman block his path, coldly asking if he plans to leave without ordering anything. Terrified by the beast's glare, Macway stammers and quickly orders a la, his confidence completely evaporated. He frantically confirms his order for a latte to go, desperate to escape the intimidating pressure of the mercenaries. Macway flees the shop with his drink, leading Ronia to consider stocking disposable containers for future quick exits. The tension lifts as the mercenaries call out to Ronia, asking if they can place their own orders now. Chais, the loud mercenary, complains that a sandwich isn't enough and demands a block of bacon grilled like a steak. Ronia happily accepts the challenge, heading to the kitchen to prepare the hearty meat dish right away. The lion leader, Chais, scolds Chais for his rude behavior, growling at him to mind his manners in the shop. Ronia giggles at the sight of the arrogant beast getting scolded, finding the shift from top dog to scared puppy amusing. Chais shrinks back in fear, sweating profusely as he pleads with his leader to spare him from further lecturing. Another mercenary expresses jealousy that Ronia only knows Chai's name and demands an introduction for himself. Chais realizes they never properly introduced themselves and gathers the group for a formal greeting. He introduces himself as Chais and promises to lend Ronia a hand if any other persistent customers bother her. Ryusei introduces himself next, ordering the same bacon dish as Chais while praising the relaxing atmosphere. Chais impatiently asks where his steak is, eager to satisfy his hunger after the long and tiring battle. Senna yawns and introduces himself, assuring Ronia that they will eat enough to make up for driving other customers away. Ronia smiles warmly at the group, introducing herself and welcoming them to her cafe with genuine pleasure. Ryusei the white cat refuses Ronia's offer of a towel, insisting that he is already dry and would only dirty the cloth with his paws. Mr. Lion orders bacon steaks for the group while Ronia inwardly frets about the risk of getting their beautiful fur dirty rather than her shop. She watches the sleeping Senna with a warm, amused smile. When Ronia asks about using garlic, the wolf snaps that they aren't vampires, triggering her memory of garlic being used to ward off evil in her past life. Although the wolf claims to hate the smell, he admits he can eat it, so Ronia decides to proceed with the seasoning. She politely bows and excuses herself to the kitchen to begin cooking. Ronia portions the meat into steak-sized cuts and seasons them with pepper and rosemary, noting that the cured bacon needs no extra salt. The thick, seasoned slabs of meat are laid out and ready for the pan. She explains that mincing the garlic before adding it to the olive oil is key to infusing the flavor. Once the oil absorbs the garlic essence, she slowly fries the bacon steaks over low heat. Careful not to overcook the meat, she prepares a fresh salad side dish to balance the heavy meal. With a cheerful smile, she serves the sizzling plates to the mercenaries and tells them to enjoy. The group digs in with gusto, their eyes wide as they exclaim how awesome the food tastes. Ronia feels bashful receiving such high praise for a dish that didn't take long to make. A close-up reveals her soft gaze as she watches them eat with genuine affection. Realizing she is staring, she quickly apologizes for her rudeness and hides her embarrassment behind a tray. She thanks them for the compliments, admitting that seeing their excitement makes her happy. One of the mercenaries eagerly asks for seconds, causing Ronia to blush at their voracious appetite. Suddenly, a shock runs through the room, causing Ronia to freeze in surprise. She covers her mouth with her hands, eyes wide with disbelief at the sudden event. Her focus narrows intensely on the mercenary as she processes the transformation before her. The wolf apologizes, explaining that his exhaustion caused his beast form to accidentally slip out. Far from being scared, Ronia is starry-eyed and exclaims that seeing the transformation was amazing. She eagerly begs him to show her the transformation one more time, leaving the wolf completely confused by her request. Calling her strange, he agrees to indulge her curiosity and prepares to shift again. Ronia watches in awe as he transforms instantly without magic tools, thinking the beastkin race is incredibly cool. Caught up in the fluffiness, she demands they do it again, and the mercenaries tirelessly poof back and forth for her amusement. The wolf finally calls a timeout, dizzy and admitting he overdid it a bit. Ronia realizes she made him run out of magic power and apologizes profusely for wearing him out. He explains that magic depletion feels like anemia but assures her he will recover quickly if he stops using it. Exhausted, he asks the manager if he can take a nap to regain his strength. As the group sleeps in their animal forms, Ronia admits to herself that while their human forms are wonderful, she likes the fluffy forms best. Ronia notices the beast boss licking his paws and gently offers to treat his injury. She prepares to use her healing magic, confident that her focus will overcome her lack of recent practice. Memories flood back of her obsessive practice, drawing magic circles until she collapsed with fevers. The lion watches keenly, acknowledging that her ability to wield magic is undeniably real. Ronia declares she cannot ignore the injured, even if she cannot fully explain the dark origins of her skills. A flashback reveals her brutal teacher slicing his own arm to force her to heal him under extreme duress. She recalls entering the elite St. Chrysanti Academy at 12, where she first encountered her fiancé Schneider. The grueling curriculum pushed her to the brink of physical collapse, yet she secured the top rank among all girls. Her family reacts with cold indifference, showing no joy for her hard-won achievement. They dismiss her success as the bare minimum expected of her station, claiming they are too busy for praise. Her father cruelly remarks that being the top female student is nothing worth bragging about. Ronia lowers her head in resignation, accepting that her family will never value her accomplishments. She stands isolated in the shadows, the weight of their rejection crushing her spirit. Schneider steps in to challenge her despair, insisting that she has every right to be proud. He recognizes the immense effort she poured into upholding her family's demanding pride. Breaking the tension, he cheerfully invites her to share the cake and sandwiches he made himself. They sit together for a peaceful meal, a stark contrast to the harshness of her home life. Schneider reminisces about the coffee incident and the servant who took the fall for her. He explains that thanks to Ronia's plea, the servant Reijo found a better position at his grandfather's estate. He smiles warmly, describing domestic tasks like cooking as a wonderful way to pass the time. Schneider thanks her sincerely, giving her credit for saving the servant's livelihood. Ronia shyly admits she has been learning to brew coffee, prompting him to call her name with sudden tenderness. He gazes at her with deep concern, urging her not to push herself so hard for others. A single tear falls as his kindness penetrates the walls she built around her heart. She jolts in surprise, unprepared for the warmth and empathy he is offering. Schneider confesses his love, but Ronia recalls how she distanced herself to avoid the tragic future she foresaw. She admits she once hoped he would lead her to a happy ending, but fear held her back. Returning to the present, Ronia announces that the healing treatment is complete. She sighs in relief, grateful that the beast man accepted the aid without questioning her history. Ronia collapses onto the table, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. The cafe remains peaceful, her secret life as a former noble still safe from the world. She takes a moment to center herself, gazing out at the life she has built with her own hands. Ronia vows to hide her lineage forever to protect the precious leisure she has fought so hard to obtain. Ronia reflects on how different things might have been if she possessed her current mindset back when school started. Servants gush over the couple, proclaiming that Lady Ronia will make the most beautiful bride for Prince Schneider. They admire the pair, comparing them to a perfect prince and princess straight out of a romance novel. Flustered and blushing, Ronia denies the comparison and insists they are not just characters in a book. She stands beside him with a troubled expression, feeling the weight of the fictional narrative pressing on her reality. Schneider politely asks the servants to leave the room so he can speak with Ronia in private. He gently asks what is troubling her, noting that it is highly unusual for her to raise her voice. Ronia clutches her chest, desperately hoping that they might defy the story's tragic ending. The narrative introduces Ms. Ano Akuji, a baron's daughter and the designated protagonist of the original story. Schneider meets Ms. Ano, who humbly bows and claims that being paired with royalty is an honor beyond her station. Whispers fill the hall as students gossip about Ms. Ano's shamelessness in approaching the prince despite his engagement. Schneider defends her firmly, stating that partners are decided by lot and all students are equal at the academy. Ms. Ano looks up at him with a bold gaze, asking him to drop the formalities and call her Schneider. Their hands clasp together in a warm handshake, marking the beginning of their deepening connection. Ronia watches silently from the library, observing the spark between her fiancé and the new student. Schneider takes the initiative to approach Ms. Ano, his natural kindness drawing him toward her. A close-up captures the growing intimacy between them as they share a moment of connection. Ronia observes the scene with wide eyes, realizing the plot is unfolding exactly as written. Ms. Ano smiles brightly, her heart captured by the prince just as the story predicted. The narrative confirms that Mizano has fallen for him, sealing the inevitability of the plot. Schneider's effortless charm and lack of arrogance make him universally trusted and adored by the student body. In stark contrast, Ronia sits alone in the library, acknowledging that she lacks the love that surrounds him. Schneider interrupts her solitary study session, calling out her name softly. He comments on her hard work and the pile of books, but Ronia insists on sticking to her strict schedule. She explains her need to protect her top rank, but Schneider tells her she doesn't need to be so strict with herself. He looks at her with deep concern, asking if it would really be so terrible if she wasn't always first. Ronia stares at him in stunned silence, unable to process his suggestion to let go of her perfectionism. Schneider sighs and looks at her with pity, noting that she always seems so exhausted. Ronia recalls that despite her stubbornness, he always tried his best to make her relax and rest. However, she notes that alongside his care, she began to sense him changing little by little. Time passes until they turn 16, and Ronia stares at the exam results showing she has fallen to second place. Mizano challenges the prince, declaring that she won't hold back in her goal to surpass Ronia. Schneider comforts Ronia, assuring her that the difference between first and second place matters little. He smiles warmly at her, maintaining a cheerful demeanor as they stand in the hallway. Placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, he insists that their relationship remains secure and praises her hard work. Ronia notes that Miss Mizano has consistently held the second rank among the ladies since her transfer. As they pass each other, Ronia senses that Mizano has targeted her as a rival from the very start. She internally admits that Mizano possesses overflowing magical talent that far exceeds her own. Schneider dismisses Mizano's arrogance, reminding Ronia that her own talent survived a brutal tutoring regimen. He nods in agreement with himself, noting that Ronia is about to take a break to leave the country. Ronia feels uneasy leaving Hansel alone, grateful for the few friends who genuinely worry about her. She thanks Lexi and Hansel, resolving to ignore Mizano's provocations. However, the calm is shattered when a new incident suddenly occurs. Carrying a heavy stack of books, Ronia insists she is strong enough to manage without magic. A rushing student slams into her, apologizing frantically as chaos ensues. The heavy books tumble to the ground with a series of loud thuds. Ronia gasps in horror as she realizes the disastrous impact of the collision. Accusations fly that Ronia dropped the books on Mizano out of jealousy over Prince Schneider. Ronia forces a polite smile and apologizes for the accident, masking her disdain for the Baron's daughter. Mizano glares back with intense, silent fury, her eyes burning with hostility. Ronia questions if she should apologize again, worried about maintaining proper decorum between their stations. Mizano remains silent, her expression hardening into a look of pure venom. With a sharp turn, Mizano storms off down the hall, leaving Ronia in her wake. Schneider watches the scene unfold with a look of concern and confusion on his face. On another day, a classmate's magic runs rampant, forcing Ronia to react instantly to the danger. Ronia deftly deflects the out-of-control magic cluster, sending it flying away from herself. By a twist of cruel fate, the magic explodes directly beside Miss Mizano. Despite Ronia's insistence that it was an accident, the onlookers are convinced she attacked out of resentment. Ronia wins the magic competition, but Mizano's malicious expression suggests the conflict is far from over. Gossip spreads like wildfire as Ronia realizes the novel's plot is forcing its way into reality regardless of her choices. The scene shifts to the inevitable condemnation as a voice declares it will reveal her crimes. Ronia reflects that while she let Schneider protect and spoil her, she never truly relied on him for her future. Walking away from her past life, she bids a silent farewell to the man she was engaged to. She concludes that love requires mutual support to survive, wishing him happiness as she accepts her fate. The scene opens with a sharp-eyed man dressed in a formal suit standing outside the cafe, hinting at an impending arrival. Ronia wakes up in bed, looking disoriented and murmuring about a dream she just had. Tears stream down her face as she wipes them away, reminding herself that the painful memories are all in the past. 10 days have passed since the Beast mercenary group began frequenting her cafe, changing the daily rhythm of her life. The customer base has shifted from men seeking her attention to genuine coffee enthusiasts and young women who enjoy chatting. The jingle of the doorbell signals the arrival of the Beast kin, who now visit frequently after finishing their work for the day. Chaos erupts at the counter as the mercenaries shout their orders for steak, coffee, and juice all at once, overwhelming Ronia. The noise settles slightly as the group sniffs the air, their keen senses picking up a sweet scent coming from the manager. Their eyes sparkle with hunger as they spot the new treats she is holding and demand to try them immediately. Ronia nervously explains that these are just test products, secretly relieved they didn't notice the lotuses helping her. She hums a happy tune while thinking about adding cakes to the menu, inspired by their praise from yesterday. The small lotus spirits help prepare strawberries, their assistance crucial since the shop has been busy enough to run low on sugar. A close-up showcases a delicious tart piled high with fresh strawberries. Next is a classic shortcake, looking fluffy and inviting. A rich chocolate cake sits ready, with a lotus spirit eyeing the frosting. Ronia explains that she dipped the remaining strawberries in chocolate to share with her little helpers. She introduces the bariba fruit, a jewel-like red fruit from this world that she plans to use for decorations. The mercenaries offer to chase away the annoying cologne-wearing man if he ever bothers her again. Ronia feels a warm, fuzzy feeling knowing they care for her, even if their protectiveness is a bit intense. She smiles confidently and assures them that she can protect herself if it comes down to it. Suddenly, the wolf mercenary leans in close, commenting on how enthusiastic she looks. Ronia freezes as a rough tongue licks her cheek with a loud slurping sound. The lion grins and remarks that the flavor on her face was quite sweet. He explains that she had sugar on her cheek, which is why she was sparkling earlier. Ronia tries to rationalize the behavior, telling herself that licking is probably a normal greeting for beastkin. The wolf teases her, noting she is still sparkling and asking if he should lick her too. Her heart pounds loudly, leaving her confused whether she is nervous because of the intimacy or simply because a large predator is so close. Ryusei the cheetah simply enjoys his sweets, unbothered by the commotion around him. A small lotus spirit eats a strawberry, and Ronia decides there is nothing to worry about if their intentions are just about sugar. The next morning, someone knocks on the door before the shop has officially opened. A voice calls out, "Good morning, Ronia," causing her eyes to snap open in shock. She stares at the door, recognizing the voice but unable to believe who it is. The door opens to reveal the visitors standing in the morning light. Ronia cries out in disbelief as she recognizes her grandfather Ronald and the servant Reijo. Ronald smiles warmly and asks if they can eat breakfast together after such a long time. He leans in with a gentle but mischievous expression, waiting for her response. The chapter ends with Ronald accepting the invitation before she can even answer, stepping into her new life. Grandfather Ronald announces his arrival and steps into the room, surprising Ronia with his sudden appearance. Recovering quickly, Ronia greets Grandfather Ronald and invites him to join her for a breakfast of French toast. Although Reijo warns that they lack time, Ronald dismisses the concern and insists on joining Ronia for the meal. Ronia begins cooking by beating eggs in a bowl with milk and sugar while a small fairy helps with the ingredients. She coats a pan with butter and fries the soaked bread over low heat, carefully flipping it to ensure it cooks evenly. Ronald remarks that the food smells quite nice, comparing the aroma to flowers as he waits. Taking a seat, Ronald compliments the store's atmosphere, to which Ronia responds with a polite expression of gratitude. The cooking process concludes by topping the toast with marshmallows and baking it in a toaster oven for a few minutes. The small lotuses gather around the jar, staring intently with hungry eyes as the food is prepared. One fairy stares with such intensity that it begins to drool in anticipation of the sweet treat. Ronia notices their hunger and turns to Reijo, kindly asking if he would like to have some as well. Reijo declines with his eyes closed, stating that a servant may not dine at the same table as his master. He steps back respectfully while Ronia looks on, seemingly troubled by his strict adherence to protocol. Ronia notes that Reijo's sense of responsibility remains strong and that he always maintains his standing by staying one step back. Ronald watches the interaction silently, his sharp eyes observing Ronia's demeanor carefully. Ronald cheerfully greets the fairies while Ronia serves the finished French toast to the table. The small fairies gasp in delight and surprise as they are acknowledged and served. Ronia smiles warmly and invites everyone to eat the meal together. The fairies bow in gratitude before the plate of marshmallow-topped toast, eager to dig in. A fairy takes a large bite of the sweet treat, savoring the flavor with a happy expression. The group enjoys the meal, with even Reijo snacking in the background while Ronald eats with a satisfied smile. Ronald gazes at Ronia with a gentle expression as she smiles contentedly amidst the floating flowers. Ronia reports that both the coffee and cakes are popular, telling Ronald that running the cafe alone is fulfilling. Ronald admits he intended to assist if she had difficulties, but realizes his help is unnecessary given her success. Ronia looks confused by his statement, prompting Ronald to apologize for his previous assumptions. He explains that interfering in her annulment with Schneider would have caused permanent damage between the royal and Gevizra families. Ronald expresses regret that he couldn't protect her until graduation, acknowledging how hard she had studied. He looks down with a heavy heart, while Ronia quietly absorbs his explanation for his lack of intervention. Ronia brightens the mood by offering more food, explaining that the annulment felt like a release that allowed her to live her dream. She turns to Reijo and mentions how she practiced brewing coffee on her own after he gave up on her. Ronald watches her interaction with the servant, a genuine smile forming on his face at her resilience. In a flashback, a younger Ronia struggles to lift a heavy object while Reijo warns her not to overdo it. Ronia smiles warmly at her guest, offering juice to the small fairies while noting their unusual fondness for people. The gentleman freezes in shock as Ronia casually explains that providing sweets has made the shy creatures helpful assistants in her store. Realizing the implications, he stammers that these lotuses inhabit the sacred forest of the human-hating elemental Lord Orphidolt. Ronia confirms his fears with a calm nod, revealing that she formed a contract with Lord Orphidolt during her academy days. Overwhelmed by this revelation, the man screams in sheer disbelief at the absurdity of her claim. He frantically questions the circumstances, reminding her that Orphidolt is the vital nature deity whose absence would turn the world into a desert. Regaining his composure, he leans in with intense curiosity and begs Ronia to recount the interesting story behind the contract. Ronia agrees with a gentle smile, casting her mind back to the days before Lady Mizano arrived at the academy. In the flashback, she gently feeds a group of eager small spirits, delighting in their appetite for her homemade treats. The scene is peaceful as the small creatures happily munch on the pastries amidst the lush greenery of the forest. Ronia narrates that she was brought to the Forest of Spirits for a magical contract exam under the guidance of Lord Grisha. A majestic, long-haired spirit appears before her, coldly asking if she is the one seeking to form a contract. Unfazed by his imposing presence, she introduces herself as Ronia Gevizra while her companion watches tensely. Orphidolt's expression twists into rage as he summons vines, declaring his hatred for nobles and their worthless pride. Her guard warns her of the danger and urges a retreat, insisting that the spirit views all humans as untrustworthy. Ignoring the warning, Ronia steps forward and bluntly praises the spirit's divine beauty, causing him to snap back in annoyance. Orphidolt stares down at her, his gaze sharp and piercing as he tries to intimidate the human girl. Ronia's hand clenches her dress tightly, betraying her nervousness despite her brave outward appearance. She looks up with unwavering, innocent eyes, refusing to back down from the angry deity. Breaking the tension, she presents a basket of homemade sweets and politely invites him to try them if he wishes. Orphidolt blinks in confusion, completely caught off guard by the unexpected offering of pastries. Ronia worries internally that human food might be disagreeable to a tree spirit as he skeptically inspects the gift. Muttering about her attempt to bribe him, the spirit reaches into the basket and picks up a cookie. He takes a bite and calls it unpleasant, though his actions contradict his words as he continues to eat. Ronia beams with determination, promising to bake even more and return the next day to see him again. The spirit turns his back on her without a word, retreating into the depths of the forest with his long hair flowing behind him. He pauses for a brief moment, glancing back silently before disappearing completely into the woods. Ronia notices that the harsh wrinkles between his eyebrows have softened, realizing her gift had an effect. Back in the present, she explains that she continued to visit him, believing that a protector of nature would not destroy the world without cause. The gentleman leans in closer with a wide grin, eagerly demanding to know what happened next in her tale. Ronia pauses to collect her thoughts, preparing to continue the story of her unique bond with the spirit. She recalls how, with Lord Grisha's help, she managed to step foot into the precious forest of spirits once again. Ronia stands amidst a lush garden, seemingly unnoticed by the world, but her presence draws the attention of cats and hidden spirits alike. She smiles warmly and greets the invisible gathering, shocking the fairies who realize this curious human child can actually see them. A small spirit flutters close, remarking on how earnest and unusual she is for a noble lady. High above, the majestic mythical beast Lacrane perches on a branch, observing the girl with a sharp, piercing gaze. In a flashback, a younger Ronia asks grandfather Ronald if he possesses any knowledge about the legendary beast Lacrane. Ronald tugs his beard and admits he was rejected by the creature, explaining that Lacrain despises human nobles even more than Lord Orphidolt does. Back in the present, Ronia eagerly jumps into the story of her first encounter, apologizing to the startled spirits for her loud enthusiasm. The table falls silent as Ronald and the small spirits listen intently to her recounting the tale. Ronald notes that Ronia is obviously bound to these powerful entities through contracts, the evidence of her power plain to see. Ronia immediately denies the term contract, insisting with a pure smile that they are tied together by the bonds of friendship. Ronald's eyes widen slightly, struck silent by the sheer innocence and unconventional power of her statement. He realizes he must have a serious conversation with her about the reality of her situation very soon. Ronia interrupts his internal monologue, calling out to Grandfather Ronald to continue her story. She casually drops the bombshell that she also formed a contract with Lacrain, causing the servant to panic at the thought of a godlike beast worrying about her. Flashbacks reveal how she fearlessly treated Lacrain's injuries, and she explains that he now helps her by delivering her letters. An image depicts the terrifying mythical beast dutifully carrying a small envelope in his beak like a loyal messenger. While Ronia excitedly pivots to talking about the lotuses, the servant trembles at her power, and Ronald struggles with a heavy secret. The chapter ends with the ominous revelation that her brother and ex-fiancé are actively hunting for Ronia. Grandfather Ronald reveals that a dispute erupted at the academy shortly after Ronia's expulsion, though he kept this information from her. Her two best friends, Lacrain and the others, who were absent during the conviction, immediately went to confront Schneider upon hearing the news. Meanwhile, Ronia's brother Robert was furious, not out of worry, but because she had tarnished the family name. Robert demanded to know Ronia's whereabouts from Grandfather Ronald, but the old man refused to say a word. In the present, Ronald watches Ronia smile, satisfied with his decision to keep her hidden so she could find peace. He silently vows to protect her new life, wishing for her to rest and recover from the past turmoil. The small lotus fairies wobble as they work together to carry a heavy plate of treats toward the guest. They cheerfully present the food to Ronald, their small voices chirping in a friendly invitation. Ronia translates their gestures, explaining to her grandfather that the fairies are asking him to join them. Ronald is taken aback by the creature's hospitality, letting out a surprised sound at their unexpected kindness. He tastes the coffee and sweets, blushing slightly as he thanks Ronia for the delicious meal. The fairies eagerly offer him sugar cubes and milk, buzzing around him with enthusiastic hospitality. Reijo flushes and politely refuses the invitation to sit, insisting that he cannot possibly dine with his master. Ronald sighs wistfully, wishing that one day the social barriers would vanish so they could all enjoy a cup together. Changing the subject, Ronald asks Ronia how she managed to become so close with the usually shy lotus fairies. Ronia explains that they bonded during the contract exam when she was visiting Lord Orphidolt's domain. A flashback shows the small fairies peeking out timidly from behind the grass and flowers. Ronia spots the hidden creatures and exclaims in delight at how cute they are. She smiles gently and introduces herself, apologizing for scaring them. She offers them the sweets she had originally brought as a gift for Lord Orphidolt, as they were leftovers. The fairies remain cautious, hiding beneath the clover leaves while eyeing the human intruder. However, the sweet scent of the cookies draws their attention, and they peek out with growing curiosity. One fairy warns the others to be careful, but their desire for the treats begins to outweigh their fear. Ronia decides to leave the sweets on a cloth for them, giving them space to approach on their own. She walks away without looking back, hoping they will accept the peace offering. As soon as she is gone, the fairies swarm the pile of star-shaped cookies. Ronia explains that since she knew they liked ripe fruit, she reasoned they would enjoy the sweets as well. Back in the present, Ronald listens intently and asks if she has made any new friends since coming to the town. Ronia hesitates, looking thoughtful as she considers his question. She admits that while everyone in town is nice, she isn't sure if she can call them close friends yet. An image of the rowdy beastkin mercenaries flashes through her mind, their imposing figures contrasting with their friendly behavior. She blushes and debates whether to tell her grandfather about the beastkin, specifically how fluffy they are and that they licked her face. Ronia smiles nervously while holding a cup, admitting she doesn't really understand what the lotus fairies are trying to do. Her guest warns her that despite their size, beastkin possess enough strength to tear a human apart if they wanted to. Ronia looks at the cute fairies and the man, thinking that Lamo would have a panic attack if he heard this conversation. The elderly gentleman laughs heartily, realizing he might have asked about her situation a bit too soon. He prepares to take his leave, asking Ronia to tell him more about her friends the next time he visits. His expression suddenly turns serious as he hesitates, indicating he has something important to say. The air grows heavy as he looks at her with a grave expression, preparing to deliver unsettling news. He reveals that Robert is actively looking for her, dropping the name of her brother with heavy significance. Ronia freezes completely, her eyes wide with shock as the peaceful atmosphere shatters. She stammers in disbelief, barely able to process the terrifying reality that her brother is searching for her. A memory of her brother shouting her name echoes in her mind, bringing back the fear of his authority. The gentleman quickly reassures her, stating clearly that he did not tell Robert anything about her whereabouts. Ronia recalls a cold memory of her brother ordering her to apologize to their mother and demanding perfection. She wonders bitterly why he is looking for her now, wishing he would just forget her existence entirely. Trembling, she realizes there is no benefit for the family to bring her back, which makes his search even more terrifying. To ensure her safety, the gentleman decides he won't visit often to avoid raising Robert's suspicions. Ronia realizes that her sharp-witted brother might notice their grandfather's absence and trace it back to her. The gentleman adds another shock, revealing that Schneider has also been asking about where she has gone. Ronia is taken aback, confused as to why her former fiancé would care about her location after the annulment. She reasons that she would understand if he only wanted to explain the annulment to her grandfather, but this feels different. The gentleman asks if she would consider giving Schneider another chance, reminding her of how he nursed her when she was sick. Ronia admits the memory is nostalgic, recalling that they were indeed very close back in those days. An image of their hands intertwined from the past flashes in her mind, symbolizing the bond they once shared. However, she states with finality that Schneider chose a future that does not include her. She wishes him happiness with his true love, declaring she has no right to interfere with the path he decided on. The gentleman kisses her forehead tenderly, telling her not to push herself as he offers comfort. A fragmented memory surfaces of a voice calling her name, triggering a wave of deep emotion. She remembers her grandfather hugging her tight in the past, telling her to make sure she makes a lot of friends. The memory fades into a scene of her brother and grandfather standing together, highlighting the complex family dynamic. Ronia stares blankly at the floor as the visitor leaves, the weight of the past pressing down on her. She leans against the counter for support, surrounding herself with the small fairies to calm her racing heart. Trembling slightly, she whispers to herself that it is okay and convinces herself that they will never find her. Tears of relief stream down Ronia's face as she begs the little spirits to let her stay in the forest with them if danger arises. Sniffling, she wipes her eyes and offers a heartfelt thank you to the concerned creatures. Determined to move forward, she slaps her cheeks to pull herself together and focuses on finishing the Beria cake. Her thoughts drift to Hansel and Lexi, the friends she left behind when she chose to pursue her dream. She longs to tell them she is safe and happy, but knows contact is too dangerous while Schneider and her brother hunt for her. A pang of loneliness hits her as she wonders if she will ever be able to make true friends like them again. She grips her bag tightly, recalling that her previous friendships were only forged through her connection to Schneider. It dawns on her that she never actually tried to make friends on her own accord before this new life. Back at the cafe, she shares a cheerful morning greeting with a customer who praises the delicious cake. Ronia compliments a girl's intricate braids, and the customer proudly replies that her talented brother did them for her. As the girl waves goodbye, Ronia smiles and notes how skilled the brother must be. Slumping slightly, she wonders how to make friends from scratch, realizing that while small talk is easy, she can't even ask for names. Her melancholy sigh is interrupted by Senna, who arrives early and looks concerned by her low spirits. He awkwardly apologizes for coming before his scheduled time and turns to leave, thinking he is bothering her. Ronia quickly stops him, smiling warmly and inviting him to take a seat anywhere he likes. Senna explains that he is off duty today, while the rest of the mercenary group will arrive at noon. Curious about their schedule, Ronia asks if they usually work at night since they always visit around this time. He reveals they patrol the borders before sunset to intercept criminals from the barbaric neighboring country. They ensure no intruders return to the routes before heading back, keeping towns like hers safe from harm. Ronia reverently calls them the kingdom's strongest shield, but Senna simply smiles and credits their beastkin's strength and senses. He looks away with a slight blush, muttering that her genuine praise is a weird response. Seeking comfort, he transforms into his fluffy wolf form and invites her to sit and talk since the shop is empty. Ronia squeals over his magnificent fur while he settles in for a well-deserved break. His sharp eyes spot the book she is holding, and he asks if it is a novel. Remembering she was reading an old story previously, he asks if she is a fan of that specific author. Ronia realizes he pays attention to her habits and asks if reading is a hobby of his, to which he admits he just hasn't had time lately. He explains that while he couldn't read freely in the past, he managed to get through many popular titles back then. With a contented expression, he notes that his new life finally allows him the freedom to read as much as he wants. Ronia stares at the fluffy wolf, her mind racing with a realization. Seizing the opportunity, she offers to recommend books she likes so they can share their literary interests. Internally, she is screaming with joy, celebrating the chance to bond over a shared passion. She stammers out a proposal that they could be more than just manager and customer, envisioning them reading together. Senna tilts his head in confusion at her hesitation, asking what she is trying to say. She clenches her fists tightly, gathering every ounce of her courage for the big question. With a blushing face and hopeful eyes, she finally asks the big bad wolf if he wants to be her friend. Senna stares intensely at Ronia, asking if she truly understands the nature of beastkin. Ronia confidently affirms that she knows exactly what they are, having recently witnessed their transformation. A sudden wave of anxiety hits her as she wonders if she answered too quickly or made a mistake. Senna warns her gravely that a beastkin possesses the strength to easily rip a human apart. Instead of fear, Ronia beams with admiration, simply noting how very strong they must be. The small lotuses tremble in terror, visualizing themselves being torn to shreds by the giant claws. Ronia looks up innocently and asks Senna point-blank if he intends to rip her apart. Senna pauses in silence, caught off guard by her direct and fearless question. He averts his gaze and quietly admits that he has no intention of doing so. The tension breaks as he formally introduces himself as Senna, extending a hand in greeting. Ronia eagerly grasps his large paw, introducing herself with a bright smile as they shake hands. A blush spreads across her face as she focuses intently on the texture of his hand. Her internal thoughts scream in delight as she discovers the squishy sensation of his paw pads. Unable to resist, she begins kneading the soft pads, lost in the tactile bliss of the moment. Senna lets out a resigned sigh, realizing exactly what she is focusing on. He gives her permission to continue, telling her it is all right to touch him. He leans in with a knowing look, asking if that is what she really wants to do. Senna reveals he could tell she wanted to touch them since they met, citing her obsession with Ryusui's tail. He encourages her to go ahead, assuring her that everyone already knew about her fascination. Flustered but happy, Ronia apologizes for her indulgence before diving back in. She strokes his fur with sheer delight, finding the silky texture completely addictive. Senna rests his chin on his hands, allowing her to pamper him while she tries to restrain her excitement. He suddenly asks if he can participate in the touching as well. Ronia pauses in confusion, wondering if he means he wants to touch her braided hair. She decides not to hold back since he seems comfortable, reasoning that touching her hair is harmless. To her surprise, Senna leans forward and rubs his cheek against hers in a nuzzling motion. Ronia freezes in shock, stammering as she asks Senna what he is doing. Senna calmly explains that this is simply friendly skinship between them. Ronia repeats the phrase, trying to process the intimacy of the gesture while blushing furiously. She feels flustered by the close contact, conscious of the fact that Senna is a male. The small lotuses demonstrate by nuzzling each other, confirming that this is normal behavior for their kind. Senna pulls back slightly, realizing humans might not do this and asking if she is uncomfortable. Ronia blushes deeply, deciding that if this skinship leads to friendship, she wants to participate. Senna watches her closely, his ears perked as he waits for her response. Ronia places her hand on his cheek, determined to do her best despite her embarrassment. She realizes that since rubbing is welcomed, she can indulge in touching their fluff even more. She presses her cheek against his fur, overwhelmed by how incredibly soft it feels. Ronia asks if this is common, and Senna reveals that Chais always wants to engage in skinship. Senna admits it can be annoying and he prefers to refrain, but offers to prepare Chais for her. Ronia imagines the large lion beastkin, worrying that his fur might be rough or scary. She pictures Chai's imposing figure but still feels a strong desire to engage in friendly skinship with him. Her desire to bury her face in his magnificent fluffy mane overrides her hesitation. She eagerly asks Senna if Chais also engages in this kind of friendly physical contact. With a hopeful expression, she asks if Chais would be okay with his mane being touched. Senna smirks and asks her directly if she wants to touch the boss. Senna warns Ronia that the boss will get furious if she touches his mane, citing a time Chais got an earful for messing it up. Ronia looks down in disappointment, accepting that such a reaction is to be expected from a proud leader. Senna explains that lions take immense pride in their manes, making it strictly off-limits for anyone to touch. He adds a terrifying detail, claiming the boss would likely bite her head off or rip her apart if she tried. Ronia trembles in fear while Senna bursts into laughter, enjoying her terrified reaction a little too much. She stares at him in shock, processing the threat while trying to gauge if he is serious. Senna reveals he was just teasing her and offers to ask the boss for permission on her behalf. He reassures her that since the boss likes her, he would probably allow her to touch his mane without issue. Shifting the topic, Ronia asks about Ryus, curious about his distant behavior towards her. She admits with a downcast look that she feels Ryus dislikes her because he seems to avoid her. Senna corrects her immediately, stating with confidence that Ryus actually likes her quite a lot. He explains that while Ryus is popular with ladies in human form, he despises those who flee upon discovering his beast nature. Senna points out that Ronia is different because she continued to serve them normally even after learning they were beastkin. Ronia blushes and wonders if this means she might eventually be allowed to touch Ryus's tail. Senna gazes at her intensely, declaring that she is special to all of them. Leaning in close, he whispers that she has a really sweet scent that catches his attention. He describes the scent as a mix of sweets and nature, claiming them to be his absolute favorites. Ronia realizes he is referring to the time she touched him while he was sleeping, causing her to flush with embarrassment. She frantically apologizes, explaining that she thought he was asleep and had asked Shiais for permission. Senna dismisses her apology, reminding her that she is the one who healed the boss's injury. He reveals his own weakness, admitting he has less stamina than the others and that the boss was injured protecting him. Ronia reflects on the severity of their battles, realizing their opponents must have been incredibly strong to hurt them. Senna expresses his genuine gratitude, thanking her for healing his leader with her magic. Ronia admits she wanted to touch his fur more, prompting Senna to turn his tail toward her as he heads to read. He cheerfully tells her she can touch him while they read, causing Ronia to beam with pure delight. The two sit together in the quiet shop, reading books while Ronia happily indulges in fluff therapy. Ronia asks for fantasy novels about heroes coming to the rescue to distract herself from reality. She specifically asks for stories where the protagonist reincarnates into another world, but Senna notes those are rare. Senna suggests romance novels instead, assuming that women generally prefer that genre. Ronia forces a gentle smile, trying to hide the pain that the suggestion brings to the surface. She declines the offer, confessing that her heart was recently broken and she isn't ready for romance stories. Distracting herself, she points to a page and identifies a character named Lexi. Ronia cheerfully encourages Senna to feel free to ask her for advice regarding his reading habits. She shifts the tone by asking him a hypothetical question that has been weighing on her mind. She asks what he would do if he were suddenly reincarnated as a character inside a book. She clarifies the scenario, specifying that he would become someone from a story he is already familiar with. Ronia sets the stakes high, explaining that he would be the villain forced to play a role while everyone else blindly follows the plot. With a gentle but probing smile, she asks if he would submit to the narrative and act out his villainous role. Senna contemplates the question and answers that he wouldn't just silently follow the script if he found someone important to him. He draws a parallel to his current life, declaring that he treasures his comrades above all else. His conviction is absolute as he vows he would never leave them, prioritizing them over any pre-written destiny. Ronia is struck by his loyalty, murmuring that true treasure means never leaving someone behind. Sensing her sadness, Senna asks if she is the one who let go of someone she loved. A vision of a man flashes in her mind as she internally admits that she was the one who let go of his hand first. Senna observes her reaction and correctly guesses that she is not originally from this region. He tests his theory by asking if she knows about the conflict that ravaged the area 13 years ago. Her confusion confirms she is from far away, as Ronia realizes she never learned about this event in her noble education. Senna explains that a group of criminals from neighboring countries invaded, attacking cities and the Beastkin village. He describes the chaos where the Beastkin and the local lord fought back to protect the children from the threat. Although the criminals were eventually wiped out, the victory came at the cost of many beastkin lives. The image of a ruined village highlights the tragedy that claimed his parents and many others. Ronia is horrified to learn that such a brutal massacre happened on the very ground she now lives on. Senna continues the story, explaining that the survivors were forced to seek refuge far from the dangerous border. He recalls the helplessness of the orphan children who didn't know what to do after losing their parents. The chapter ends with a flashback of Shiais the lion stepping up to take the young survivors under his protection.